As expected, Carl did not choose to wait. Instead, he ordered the early deployment of his troops. Such a scenario had been predicted by Han Zio, and therefore he looked rather calm. The rest were puzzled when they saw Han Zio being so composed. The truck was parked not far away from the Dark Crow Valley base, and once the base entered the battle mode, more enemy troopers would be deployed. The tracks of the truck would definitely be discovered quickly. Jiang Wei's heart sank. Han Zio was not affected by the heavy rocking of the moving truck. He started preparing the weapons to be used for the impending battle. "Drive fast, Yulin," Jiang Wei yelled. "I know," Lai Yulin replied, biting her lips. She was trying to change gear to speed up even more. The full power of the truck's engine was unleashed, and it growled like an enraged beast. "Can't you go faster?" Jiang Wei shouted. "This is a truck, not a sports car." Lai Yulin was evidently irritated by Jiang Wei's comments. "The 4 buttons beside the gear lever can be used to activate the nitro boost," Han Zio said. "You added nitro boost to the truck." Lai Yulin was shocked yet excited to try it out. The enemy troopers from the jeep started firing their machine guns. Thick smoke emerged from the guns' barrels. Countless enemy bullets were sprayed at them. However, the shots fired from further away were largely inaccurate. The firing encompassed a huge radius, and trees along the way were getting destroyed. Some bullets also managed to scrape the surface of the container, and sparks were created from friction. Lai Yulin glanced at the rear mirror, and the next moment, the rear mirror was destroyed by a bullet. She cursed in silence. "Jiang Wei, change into your armor." Jiang Wei felt a surge of adrenaline. Even before the command, he had prepared for the moment of his suit up. The clanging of the bullets that were crashing against armor became denser. "Retaliate now," Han Zio growled, and following that, Jiang Wei kicked open the door of the container. He had a clear vision of what was in front of him. The head armor covered the fury in his eyes. He lifted the triple-barrel machine gun and started firing. The high-frequency gunshots created thunderous blasts. Thick ember emerged from the wild firing formed around the gun's barrel. Shells were spat out of the gun and fell to the ground. The large, long bullets coupled with traces of ember were directed at the armored jeeps. Boom! The bulletproof windows of 2 jeeps were shattered, and the passengers of the jeep were crushed. Jiang Wei held 2 chains of bullets tightly. The chains extended all the way behind his back and led to a box. The box contained the ammunition that Han Zio prepared. Jiang Wei had sufficient ammunition to spray to his heart's content. The enemy troopers fired back using the machine guns mounted on the jeeps. Jiang Wei was standing right at the opening of the container wearing his armor. Jiang Wei mounted the hexagonal shield before his body to shield himself from the bullets. Most of the bullets were blocked by the thick armor. Han Zio put aside his sniper rifle and grabbed the mechanical dragonfly explosives from the box. He threw them forward as if they were free of charge. The mechanical dragonflies glided close to the ground, and they were detonated once they reached the jeeps. Boom! The armored jeeps were overturned by the explosions, and the momentum from the blast resulted in the jeeps tumbling in midair before landing. Once the flames reached the fuel tanks of the jeeps, it resulted in a second explosion that caused more deaths. The never-ending death toll started flashing on the tablet's interface. Every delayed explosion caused by the mechanical dragonfly could kill 4 to 8 enemy troopers in the jeep. In addition to the kills, EXP was also awarded for the destruction of the vehicle. Therefore, every jeep destroyed generated 5,000 to 7,000 EXP for Han Zio. The rewards motivated Han Zio greatly, and he strove to cause greater damage with the explosives. Direct conflict completed. You gain 35,000 EXP. I can see the military forces of Hesla. Lai Yulin screamed in excitement. Han Zio looked ahead and saw the army of vehicles operated by the Hesla military. "Commander, there seem to be skirmishes ahead of us." Carl looked at the video feed on the operation vehicle and was thoroughly shocked. More than 20 armored jeeps were chasing after the bullet-hole-riddled heavy-duty truck. Carl's eyes lit up, and he ordered, "Provide fire support and blast everything in the vicinity." Carl's assistant understood the hidden agenda behind Carl's order. He was shocked but still carried out the order. The area of attack was locked in. The team of vehicles equipped with missile launchers moved forward, and in an instant, the rockets were launched. The truck fell inside the radius of the missile strike. The agents from Division 13 were sharp-eyed and figured out what Carl was trying to do. They were enraged and astonished. The assistant officer explained, "Damn it, we miscalculated the radius of the attack." Such words were only sufficient to fool little kids. Even though tension was bound to occur during joint operations involving different countries, nobody expected the commanding officer from Hesla to make such a brutal move. Also, he could shirk off the responsibility by conveniently claiming that it was an accident. Han Zio focused and shouted, "Nitro Boost." Lai Yulin immediately pressed the button. Blue flames emerged from the exhaust of the truck. The acceleration of the truck was exponentially increased, charging forward like a wild rhinoceros. 300, 200, 150 meters. Boom. Finally, the blast arrived and created a wave of heat that resulted in a mushroom cloud of dust. The flaming smoke rose on the plains. At that instant, everyone lost their senses. The sound of the blast exceeded the audible range of the human ear. It was as if the whole world had fallen silent. All that was left was a rising glow, which illuminated the night sky. Everything within the radius of the strike, regardless of vehicles or humans, had been demolished. After 3 seconds, an incessant ringing became audible. Rage and fury were written on the faces of the agents from Division 13. They are still alive. The agents from Division 13 were surprised. Lai Yulin was not yet out of her state of shock. It had really just been a matter of a few meters. They were really lucky to have escaped the radius of the strike in time. If not for the nitro boost, all of them would have vanished into thin air. Han Zhao coughed out the blood from his throat. He'd suffered from injuries due to the shockwave of the blast. Almost 200 HP had been lost due to the blast. Kai Baijia could not contain his anger and lashed out, prepared to be questioned by Division 13. Carl couldn't care less. Division 13 had no jurisdiction over him. Moreover, what happened just was an accident. There was no evidence to justify that he had done it on purpose. At most, he would be reprimanded by the foreign diplomats. Take him to the medic. Let them check his injuries. Han Zhao had no expression on his face. He followed the medic to the logistics vehicle. All his injuries were due to the shock on his soft body. With his endurance, he would recover quickly with a sufficient amount of rest. Therefore, he dismissed the medic. Han Zhao, who was now with the logistics division, was far from the battlefront. Han Zhao asked the 2 soldiers guarding by his side, "What's the situation of the battlefront?" One of the soldiers replied, "Everything is proceeding smoothly. Our troops have successfully reached the 4th sector." Han Zhao nodded, and just when he was about to proceed out, the 2 soldiers blocked his path. "The colonel wants you to rest and recover from your injuries here." Upon hearing that, Han Zhao realized that he had been intentionally imprisoned here by the colonel. Han Zhao frowned and asked, "Where are my friends? Your officer also tasked us to look after you and ensure that you have sufficient rest." Han Zhao understood the intentions of Kai Baijia. He did not want Han Zhao to risk his life anymore. Ultimately, Han Zhao had almost been killed by the flaming missiles. Kai Baijia wanted to keep Han Zhao away from the battlefront. Such a move is better for my plan, Han Zhao thought. Han Zhao took out the communication set from the box and adjusted it to Lin Yao's frequency. "Lin Yao, are you still alive?" "Of course, I am, but don't jinx it." Lin Yao's unfriendly voice blared out from the earpiece. "What's the situation now?" "We are preparing for the retreat." Apparently, according to the higher-ups in the base, the troops stationed around the base were all deployed to fight Hesla's army. I have yet to discover their path of retreat. Seems like I'll have to follow the order to locate the exact route. Oh, I also managed to find out the false information that Yifan collected. If Hesla's troops attack according to the information Yifan provided, they are bound to suffer heavy losses. Have you told them yet? Nope, you are the first guy that contacted me. That's good. Don't tell that to Hesla's people. Lin Yao was confused and asked, "Why so?" Han Zhao told him the series of events that had happened previously. Upon hearing the incident of the misfire of the missiles, Lin Yao's blood started boiling with rage. That is just too much. Carl revealed his intention to wipe out his allies, so it was no longer logical for Division 13 to continue assisting him in the operation and minimize his losses. The intelligence that Han Zhao provided was all aimed at eliminating Pan Kuang and Jai Jai, who were high-value members of the Germinal organization. Only the successful elimination of them would ensure the mission's success. Carl treated them like they were merely tools. Now it was time for Han Zhao to reciprocate. They wanted his intelligence reports, and he wanted their troops. Both parties were merely using each other to their advantage. As long as Hesla's army accomplished the mission using his intelligence, he could not have cared less about the number of troops they lost. What Han Zhao had not expected was Carl's intention to kill them. It is time for a change of plan. Han Zhao's eyes sparkled brightly. Morning was always the best time of the day. Likewise, morning was also the best time to fight a battle. The previous night, the Hesla troops had managed to clear the 4th high alert sector. Carl had ordered his troops to rest for an hour before continuing their advancement at first light. They wanted to reach the base in one final attack. The information Yifan had obtained was of great use. The enemy's defense mechanisms were practically useless against the attacks. The troops managed to secure their objectives with minimal losses. Once the confident troops entered the 2nd high alert sector, the favorable situation started to turn around. Not long after stepping foot into the second high alert sector, the Hesla troops faced their first enemy ambush. 2 armored vehicles and dozens of soldiers were wiped out by well-hidden mines. And that was, in fact, just an appetizer. The Hesla soldiers were soon completely devastated. The death toll was rising steadily, and there were traps and ambushes everywhere. Yifan's intelligence was practically useless at this stage. Following the false information provided led to even greater losses. The various platoons were at a complete loss. The intelligence about the first 4 high alert selectors had allowed Hesla's military to successfully penetrate deep and eventually enter the ambush zone that Jai Jai had marked out. Indeed, the information they had obtained was only bait. Han Zhao's predictions were right. They were indeed responsible for the huge losses. What was supposed to be a smooth sailing situation had flipped around. The easy win had reversed, becoming a complete disaster. Even if they managed to prevail in the battle, it was going to be a costly victory. Suddenly, a grim-looking man who held a long machete in his hand emerged from the enemy side. He was surrounded by cold and transparent waves of energy that bore similarity to flames. The air beside him distorted as he dashed toward Hesla's army. The soldiers immediately started firing their rifles, but the man span as he ran and speedily slashed his machete. The approaching bullets were disintegrated by the slashes and fell to the ground. Pugilist. While the soldiers were still in shock, the man barged into the crowd. Within seconds, the combo of powerful slashes from the shiny machete diced numerous Hesla soldiers into many bits. Blood sprayed everywhere, and broken limbs, heads, and torsos could be seen all over the ground. The man stood with conviction amid the sea of red. Pan Kuang. The agents were all astonished. Pan Kuang was the man in charge of the Dark Crow Valley base and the executive officer of the Germinal organization. In addition, he had managed to kill many powerful individuals and had a glorious battle record on the Darknet. Based on his battle record on the Darknet, Pan Kuang was highly adept with his machete. His fighting style originated from that of Rui Lan, and he was becoming known as the Soul of the Blade. The light reflected by his shiny blade was usually the last thing his slain enemies saw. The armored vehicle adjusted its position. Larger bullets were fired out from the readjusted barrel at Pan Kuang. Pan Kuang started leaping with unbelievably fast movements and dodged the incoming shots by ducking behind the trees. It was impossible for ordinary Solider to accurately trace the position of Pan Kuang. More often than not, in the blink of an eye, Pan Kuang would disappear without any trace, and the fired shots would all miss. Like a life-claiming reaper, Pan Kuang slew one soldier after another. He even managed to slash open a couple of heavily armored trucks and kill the soldiers inside the vehicles. The morale of Hesla's soldiers was at its lowest. They had suffered heavy casualties, and the initial fatigue accumulated from the attacks on the previous 4 sectors was beginning to take its toll. The situation forced Carl to slow down the attack even though he was unwilling to do so. The final 2 sectors had cost 70% more losses than expected. Carl's superiors would definitely be less impressed when they saw the battle report. We found the storeroom, but no hidden doors can be seen. There are only solid concrete walls. We also tested our explosives on the walls. Maybe there is something wrong with the intelligence report. Carl frowned hard. He summoned his assistant and said, "Bring the agents from Division 13 here. Also, get me Han Zhao. I want to ask them about the intelligence report they submitted." "Brother Zhao, we are going to retreat together with the core team of the enemy. I have planted the virus in their system, so we can now jam their communications anytime." "Good job." The Dark Crow Valley base had detonated. The entire base crumbled, and the main entrance was completed sealed by the falling rocks. Hundreds of elite soldiers were buried. The turn of events obviously infuriated Carl. The troops had fallen into the enemy's trap just as victory was in sight. Countless lives were claimed, and the base was also destroyed. This greatly depreciated the value of the victory. Carl knew that, as the commander of the forces, he would face a lot of backlash. Carl had a gloomy look, and he thought of Han Zhao's advice. If he had heeded the advice, he could have prevented the heavy losses. But even if he had the opportunity to choose again, Carl felt that he would still make the same choice. He was completely frustrated and vented that frustration on the wall of the commander's vehicle. The army had suffered heavy losses, and Carl could feel the pain in his heart. He then gave several orders to raise the morale of the dejected troops. If Han Zhao did not obtain the critical intelligence, you would have foolishly thought that you have successfully destroyed the base, when in actual fact, you have only managed to destroy the outer region. You would not even be aware that the enemies have escaped. "What other information can you guys offer?" Carl asked anxiously. Jiang Wei, who was trying hard to suppress his detest for Carl, bellowed, "2 of our companions retreated together with the enemy. Once they confirm the enemy's path of retreat, they will send it to us. Carl's eyes lit up and said immediately, "Inform me as soon as you receive any news." He had not expected that Han Zio would accomplish so much in his operation. His troops had suffered way too many losses in the previous battle, so he needed to atone for his mistakes by successfully eliminating the core of the enemy's retreating force. Pan Quang, Jai Jai, and over 200 core members were exiting the secret passageway via their vehicles. The vehicles carried huge amounts of logistical items and also contained precious information about the base. "I suppose Hesla think that they have won the battle." Jai Jai let out uncontrollable laughter. Pan Quang looked at him and said, "Don't let your guard down." Jai Jai nodded and ordered the teams to advance faster. They needed to travel for another 2 hours to reach a secret hangar that housed several Black Harrier helicopters and a small cargo plane. Lin Yao took out a tablet and activated the dormant virus planted in the enemy communication network. Everyone was shocked by the piercing shrieks in their earpieces. They immediately removed them from their ears. Jai Jai was disgruntled. Just as he was about to order the vehicle fleet to stop and inspect on the communication set, he heard a series of engine hums approaching from all directions. Pan Quang's expression immediately changed. He pushed Jai Jai, who had yet to react, to the ground. After Pan Quang completed these actions, there was a wave of gunshots. Bullets rained on the fleet from all directions. The exploding grenades overturned the vehicles of the fleet. Flames and glaring light could be seen. Jai Jai could not believe that his trap had been discovered by the invaders, who had leaked the information. Run! There was no time for any disappointment. Jai Jai was dragged toward the forest swiftly by Pan Quang. Carl, who was commanding his troops from the forest, felt a great sense of excitement. His troops had encircled the core of the retreating enemy, and he knew it was a golden opportunity for him to turn things around. A distance away, Han Zio, who had changed his appearance, was driving the jeep alone. He held a thermosensor in his hand and was searching the battle zone. He quickly discovered his targets, Pan Quang and Jai Jai, who had managed to escape the heavy encirclements. Troops who managed to catch up with Pan Quang were mercilessly destroyed by his powerful fighting abilities. Han Zio was tailing both of them from 100 meters away with the help of his thermosensor. Pan Quang wanted to destroy the jeep. However, every time his distance from the jeep shortened, Han Zio would change course and increase the distance between them again. The jeep was just like an irritant. Pan Quang thought Han Zio was operating a reconnaissance jeep that reported their location back to the enemy. Also, they expected the entire army to be following them, and therefore they were afraid to stop moving. Pan Quang, who was dragging Jai Jai in his escape, could feel the quick depletion of his energy. "We just need to reach the hangar. The helicopter will help us with the escape." Pan Quang knew that was his only way to escape. Although Pan Quang was a superhuman himself, his fear of being surrounded by a gargantuan enemy force prompted him to increase his speed. He failed to realize that Jai Jai was deeply fatigued. After chasing for about 20 minutes, both parties were far from the front line. The time is right. Han Zio could feel a sense of determination. He changed his course and went in front of his targets with the help of a map he had stolen from the logistics department. The engine stopped, and Han Zio took out all his gear. He slotted his left arm into the modified lightweight mechanical arm and attached the box housing the magnetically controlled retractable armor to his waist. He stuck his Berserk Eagle into its case and then buried 10 delayed explosion explosives in the shape of a circle with a radius of 5 meters. A thin thread was lined through the safety rings of the delayed explosion explosives, so a slight pull would activate them all. Han Zio grabbed a sniper rifle he had sourced from the logistics team and lay prone on a rock. He had a clear view of the valley and aimed his rifle in the direction his targets were expected to arrive in. Jai Jai was panting heavily. His face was all pale from the running. He was not a superhuman, so he had limited stamina. If it wasn't for Pan Quang, he would have collapsed long ago. Breathlessly, he said, "I can't run anymore." Pan Quang frowned. He was slightly irritated, but he knew he could not leave Jai Jai behind. Jai Jai's sister was in charge of the entire intelligence network of the Germinal organization. "Carry me on your back." Jai Jai was halfway through his sentence when a gunshot rang in the air. Pan Quang reacted quickly and ducked backwards. However, he was not the target of the shot. Jai Jai's head was thrust backwards as if a punch had been thrown at him. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. Jai Jai's expression froze as he collapsed to the ground. He showed no signs of life anymore. Assassination 2 completed. 100% of energy expended. You gain 4000 EXP. Pan Quang's pupils constricted. He drew out his machete and dashed toward the source of the shot. Pan Quang was closing in. Han Zhao spammed the trigger of the rifle. Chains of bullets skipped out of the barrel and pierced through the air, heading in the direction of the target. It was as if Pan Kuang had the danger-sensing ability of a beast. He always changed his position before Han Zhao fired the shots. Han Zhao fired a total of 13 shots, and Pan Kuang dodged 9 of them. The remaining 4 bullets lost their momentum after hitting the blade. The bullets were reflected by Pan Kuang's protective energy, and their total damage was merely 80 HP. A high-class superhuman would have a stronger defensive capability. Ordinary weapons and ammunition were useless against Pan Kuang. Damn it, he's quick. Han Zhao cursed softly and threw his rifle to the side. He tugged the thread in his hands and activated the delayed explosion explosives, then pretended fleeing. Pan Kuang was much faster and went up the cliff in a few steps. He stepped into the ambush circle and sensed something was off. His face changed, and he leapt into the air. His shiny blade was spinning beneath his torso. It was as if he was riding a hurricane, pushing him up the skies. Boom! The 10 explosives detonated together, and Pan Kuang was engulfed by the flames. Here delayed explosion explosives dealt a damage of 34 HP to Pan Kuang. 10 messages appeared on the interface, and after a quick glance, Han Zhao confirmed that the series of explosions had dealt more than 400 HP damage to Pan Kuang. Due to your level, you gained some information about the enemy. There was a huge difference in level. Also, much of the information was unknown. Han Zhao looked at the experience that he had accumulated on the interface, and it was as high as 520,000 points. He channeled all the experience points into raising his levels. Like a rocket, Han Zhao rapidly gained 4 levels. His HP was raised to 985, almost exceeding 1,000. Pan Kuang emerged from the flames, and he was charred from head to toe. He looked battered, and his eyes were locked onto Han Zhao like an exasperated wolf. He growled and shifted his feet as if he was gliding. In the blink of an eye, he slashed his blade with fury in an attempt to disintegrate the scoundrel who had ambushed him. The light from the blade flashed, and Han Zhao retreated 3 steps. Han Zhao's speed shocked Pan Kuang. Han Zhao dodged the slashes from Pan Kuang and took out his berserk eagles. With his increased attack speed, he fired the pistols. The bullets, which had ferrous cores, went straight toward Pan Kuang's chest. Pan Kuang moved his machete back and forth, and the bullets were slashed apart. Only 1 bullet managed to hit his chest, but Pan Kuang's immense energy lowered the bullet's momentum. The bullet was stuck between his muscles. Han Zhao realized that ordinary bullets were of little use. He immediately switched the magazine for high explosive rounds. Pan Kuang made use of this moment to approach closer. "How dare you switch magazines right before my eyes? Are you tired of living?" Changing magazine in front of a pugilist was a sign of insufficient battle experience. Pan Kuang, with a sinister look on his face, slashed toward Han Zhao's throat. He tried to pierce through Han Zhao's neck as if it just was a piece of meat on the skewer. Pan Kuang could tell that Han Zhao could not dodge his hack. Ding! The edge of the blade managed to touch Han Zhao's throat, but it was blocked by metallic scales. Pan Kuang's pupils constricted. When did this armor appear? Han Zhao felt a little suffocated. Although the magnetically controlled retractable armor could withstand the shock, there was still some leftover force that landed on his body. He raised the pistol and started firing continuously. Pan Kuang blocked the bullets with his blade again. This time, the high explosive rounds detonated the moment the blade touched its tip, and the flames enshrouded Pan Kuang's body and burnt him. What the hell is this bullet? Pan Kuang's heart skipped a beat. He channeled his energy to shake off the flames, but to no avail. The orange flames could not be shaken off, and his skin burned harshly. He could only retract his energy to protect his body. That resulted in a huge amount of energy being expended. The high explosive rounds were highly adhesive. Therefore, they were able to cause substantial, continuous damage. Pan Kuang had a high defense, so his HP was falling at a very slow rate. However, using the high explosive rounds was still more effective than normal rounds. At the cost of taking another powerful blow, he put away the berserk eagles and took out the retractable machete. He held the machete in his right hand and the mechanical arm in his left. It was as if a barbarian had taken over his body. He had the courage of a beast that was unafraid of death. He was ready to give Pan Kuang a hard fight, which was also likely to be a bloody one. The 3 items that Han Zhao was equipped with could all be used as shields, and in comparison, Pan Kuang was heavily disadvantaged since he could only use his body to defend Han Zhao's strikes. However, in reality, Pan Kuang was steadily gaining ground. For most of the time, Han Zio could only make a strike at Pan Kuang after receiving 7 slashes. The fighting abilities of the two individuals were too far apart. Pan Kuang was a legitimate pugilist, and his fighting technique was stronger than that of Han Zio by leaps and bounds. Han Zio's close-range combat technique was considered a joke by Pan Kuang. If not for the gear he was equipped with, Pan Kuang would be unscathed by Han Zio's attacks. Pan Kuang could not understand how Han Zio had the courage to challenge a pugilist in close quarters. In his mind, he considered such an act to be extremely arrogant. Han Zio was challenging Pan Kuang's greatest strength with his greatest weakness. A slash toward Han Zio's face resulted in a deep cut that bled profusely. Han Zio had taken off his mask before the battle as he had been afraid that it would be destroyed in the battle. He revealed his genuine appearance, and Pan Kuang recognized him. Han Zio was the traitor that escaped from the organization not long ago. 0. Why did number 0 attack him here? Pan Kuang did not know, and he did not care. He only knew that the man before him was an enemy. Han Zio depended greatly on the armor. With the armor, he had the ability to fight opponents of much higher levels. Han Zio locked his hand and grabbed hard on Pan Kuang's blade-wielding hand. Pan Kuang was not afraid. He twisted his arm flexibly and broke free. At the same time, he gave Han Zio another slash, which landed on the lightweight mechanical arm. If not for the platinum alloy, the mechanical arm would have long disintegrated into pieces and shards. Han Zio attentively discovered that Pan Kuang had a brief moment after every strike when he slowed down. Pan Kuang was instinctively trying to conserve his energy. He is starting to feel tired. He used up too much of his energy and lost his additional attributes. He is no longer sharp. Han Zio's eyes started flashing, and his sharp acumen allowed him to discover Pan Kuang's weakness the moment that he was waiting for had arrived. He selected an option on his interface. A new character, Norsa Connor. The summon card for character has been used. 1/1 card used. The card has been exhausted and will disappear. Pan Kuang saw a faint shadow at Han Zio's back. Who is that? He looks like Norsa. Isn't Norsa long dead? What's going on? Pan Kuang was alarmed and wanted to move back. But it was all too late. He succumbed to the illusion and was paralyzed. Scanning. The scan is complete. The target has an INT of less than 50. The illusion is successful. Without hesitation, Han Zio's lightweight mechanical arm headed for Pan Kuang's crotch, which housed his most vulnerable body part. Mega load. The power of the mechanical increased by 30% instantly, and the punch landed right on the target. Pan Kuang's wiener exploded. Han Zio had learned this move after observing a series of tapes. He had derived this legendary move from the faraway home of the warrior, the third twilight. Once the move was activated, even the skies would tremble. Han Zio's right hand was also put to use. Using the machete held in his right hand, Han Zio stabbed hard into Pan Kuang's chest without any hesitation. Pan Kuang was still affected by the illusion, and thus the protective energy shielding his body was non-existent. You killed Pan Kuang. 21,000 EXP gained. The enemy killed was 10 levels above you. You gained an additional 280% experience worth 58,800 points. Your individual contribution rate was 99%. You gained an additional 58,212 points of EXP. Completed. Contribution rate was 99%. You gained 79,200 EXP. A total EXP of 158,500. That was Han Zio's total gain from the successful killing of Pan Kuang. 10 seconds later, a virtual image of the chief of the Germinal organization appeared. Jai, have you guys retreated successfully? Yo, haven't seen you for a long time. Han Zio laughed. It felt weird that Han Zio was talking to him like a long-lost friend. The chief could not think of a reply immediately, so he paused for a moment. The chief then questioned, "Where did you obtain the confidential information?" That was the greatest puzzle in the chief's mind. "Why do you think I will tell you the answer?" Han Zio replied snobbishly. "Do you think you can damage the power of the organization with such means?" "What a fool." The chief yelled back. "I sabotaged 4 of your bases. I can destroy you easily with my hands. Don't you think that you will be able to escape from our clutches by pledging your allegiance to Stardragon? My guys will disintegrate every bone and tendon in you once they catch you." Han Zio started laughing. Following that, he blew a kiss at the chief. "Come and find me if you can." Ha ha ha. The chief was completely enraged upon hearing Han Zio's words of contempt. He wanted to say something, but before he could, Han Zio destroyed the communication device. The screen blacked out. The chief's words of fury were stuck in his throat. He was shaking in anger. Increase the bounty on $0 to $5 million. Initially, Han Zio turned to Star Dragon to seek temporary asylum from the Germinal organization and had the motive of advancing skills. He had long planned to use his facial simulator as a way to escape. Once he had the facial simulator, it was almost impossible for the Germinal organization to locate him. He no longer had to worry about being discovered and captured, which meant that he could go anywhere he wanted. He did not want to be restricted to an area where there was always a risk of angering the head of state. Furthermore, he could mislead the Germinal organization with regards to his whereabouts. Even if he wanted to borrow Star Dragon's strength and resources to crush the Germinal organization, he no longer needed to put himself under the government's control. It was now time to drop his pretense of sincerity towards Star Dragon and go solo. He could now go anywhere he wanted on the vast planet. Han Zio was in deep thought. Suddenly, a new message was shown on the interface. Completion rate 100%. Contribution rate 72%. You gain 36,000 EXP. Mission ended. It seemed that the Heslian army just finished the battle. Han Zio was quite satisfied with the result. He would only have gotten a completion rate of 40 to 50% if he did not kill Pan Quang and gang. Because Dark Crow Valley Base was the nearest point of contact for future players to join the Germinal organization. Without it, many real players would join a camp that was nearer and more convenient for them. This would greatly contain the rate of expansion of the Germinal organization in the near future. The head of Germinal still did not realize the importance of this base. He was only dismayed by the loss of an ordinary large base. In the middle of the troops, Colonel Carl was sitting in the command vehicle. He was deliberating over a very grave problem. In this mission, he did not have an outstanding performance. Instead, he made a critical error in his decision, which resulted in unnecessary casualties. Carl had an idea. He could perhaps write on the report that it was him who instructed Han Zio to take his two teammates to spy in the base that gave them critical intel. In this scenario, his significance as a commanding office would be greatly elevated. This can work. Division 13 will leave as soon as the mission is completed. They can't possibly come to Hesla and expose me. Colonel, there are two corpses in front of us. They seem to be Pan Quang and Jai Jai. Carl was in shock. He left the vehicle quickly to check out the bodies. It was really the two directors of the base. The troops were astonished, and they started chattering. They remembered how strong these two directors had been just few days ago, but they had been killed just like this. Who did this? Who left the bodies here? It must be Han Zio's doing. It's unbelievable that he actually succeeded. But why did he place the bodies on the road? This is just giving free credit to the Heslians. Carl was beaming joyously. He could claim credit for killing the directors. He waved at his troops to wrap up the bodies and take them back to camp. Just as the troops moved the bodies, the sound of landmines being activated was heard. The troops were terrified, and they quickly jumped away in different directions. Carl was caught off guard. He only had the time to drop on the floor. However, there was no explosion after seconds had passed. A brave soldier stood up and went to dig out the landmines. He weighed it in his hand and realized that it was very light. This is not a real mine. They are all empty. The troops were infuriated by the prank. This is not funny at all. What a wretched move. I just peed in my pants. Division 13 agents had a weird look on their faces. They did not know whether to laugh at what they saw. This seems like something Han Zio would do, Lai Yulin mumbled. Carl stood up with a flustered look on his face. His clean and well-pressed officer uniform was now covered in mud and grass. He was now livid. What a childish play, he said in anger. Bang! A faint gunshot was heard far away. The bullet pierced through Carl's temple, and it brought a dash of blood out of his head. Just a moment ago, he had been dreaming of his military success and his bright future. He could not believe that he had been killed on the way back to claim credit for his success in the mission. At this moment, everyone, including the Division 13 agents and the troops, was shell-shocked. They could not believe what had just happened before their eyes. On a faraway cliff top, Han Zio raised his head from the scope of a sniper. He was looking relaxed. What goes around comes around. He calmly stowed the disassembled sniper into his backpack. He had handpicked the position for an easy escape after the assassination. After turning around, he jumped off the cliff, and a feeling of freefall hit him immediately. He smacked the button on his back, and two fine, foldable metal wings expanded. He was then gliding in the air toward the forest beneath the cliff. Sky Swallow gliders. When the Hesla troops arrived at the cliff, all they could see was a nimble shadow rapidly disappearing before their eyes. 20 minutes later in Division 13 Seconds headquarters, Gu Hui called for an emergency meeting. Han Zio ran away, Gu Hui said in a sobering tone. Everyone gasped. Is he defecting? Unclear. Before this, he sniped a Heslian military officer. It is possible that he is afraid of the consequences, so he escaped. What about the GPS tracker that we planted in his phone? The tracker has not moved in the last 24 hours. Han Zio discovered and removed it. He is going to defect. The German organization has increased the reward for capturing or killing Han Zio by 5 times to 5 million on the darknet, the head of intelligence said all of a sudden. Everyone was utterly surprised. This mission had been announced as a joint exercise between the two countries. How did the German organization know that Han Zio was the main catalyst? Was there a mole within them? The increase in reward implied that the German organization was determined to kill Han Zio more than ever. Furthermore, the organization had already located Han Zio to be in the West capital. Could that have been the reason for Han Zio's departure? He came to Stardragon to seek protection in the first place. How did he suddenly have the guts to leave? This question lingered in everyone's mind. Du Hui knocked on table and concluded the meeting. We will continue to keep his identity as our agent and file him under missing personnel. 2 days later in Hesla's Morning Wind City, a coastal city near the border, Morning Wind City had a massive seaport that handled a massive volume of transcontinental ships. The city was a metropolis with many high-rise buildings. Hesla had the strongest maritime force among the 6 nations. It focused on developing its navy to protect its numerous coastal cities. There were 4 continents on Aquamarine. They were separated from one another by the massive oceans. There was an old saying, "He who controls the sea controls everything." There were tons of resources beneath the seafloor, including petroleum and natural gases. Extraction of fossil fuels from the sea was the main pillar of Hesla's economy. Now, Han Zio, with a new face, was waiting at the branch of Fabian Company in the city. He had used the black gold card from Matthews to receive VIP treatment at the place. It was his temporary rest stop. There were 3 months to open beta, and moving around on his own would yield him the greatest amount of benefits. He could use Fabian Company's channels to purchase mechanical parts with the huge amount of cash that he had accumulated to make more machinery. He could then earn a lot of EXP from this and even sell his products for more cash. Old Man Lu's secret quest would only be triggered after the open beta. He had established a good relationship with him, so he was in no rush to continue this mission. At Fabian Company's Morning Wind City branch, the man in charge, Antonio, was smoking a cigar. Han Zio took out a shopping list for supplies and said slowly, "I want all the items on this list." Antonio took the list and looked over it. The total cost will be $100,000. After the 20% discount from your black gold card, it will cost $80,000. Also, I want to buy an entry pass for the Darknet's Blood Pact Society. $20,000. Antonio's eyes narrowed. The Darknet was the hub of all intelligence related to the underworld. It was fully controlled by the Darknet organization, a neutral faction that strictly followed the principles of not getting involved in conflicts and developing peacefully. Many factions were business partners with the Darknet organization. They provided people from the underworld many kinds of services, including, but not limited to, smuggled firearms, package transfers, safe houses, hired assassins, mercenaries, and intelligence. The Blood Pact Society was the organization for hired assassins under the Darknet organization. Although Blood Pact Society was a lousy name, it had another world-famous name, the Assassin Union. Of course, one could also call it the Assassin Social Club, which instantly degraded its class. Hotel Victoria was a 43-floor tall luxurious hotel, and it had branches in every major city of the 6 nations. It was owned by the Darknet organization, and it only permitted members of the organization to stay. The hotel would use the excuse of no available rooms to deny normal people from staying in the place. While it acted as a safe house for the members, it was also the transaction hall for people from different camps. No fighting was allowed in this place, and anyone who broke the rule would receive endless assassinations. After obtaining the pass, Han Zio went to Hotel Victoria. Han Zio came forward to the front desk before revealing his Blood Pact Society coin. Then he was brought to the 23rd floor by a servant. 23rd to 25th floors belonged to the Blood Pact Society. The 23rd floor was the resting and transaction areas for all the assassins. They would get employed or paid here. The floor also had numerous entertainment facilities such as a bar, cafe, and restaurants. What will your code name be? Han Zio thought for a moment, and he decided to use an enchanting name, which might help his universal reputation in some ways. Apostle level observer number 9527 from the Crimson Dynasty stationed in Cowton Group. The server was stupefied. Assassins usually had minimalist names like Silver Fox, Devil Snake, or Ghost, the kind that was more appreciated in the age when reduced attention spans were the norm. Can you shorten the name? What? I've only ever heard of others complaining about short names. I didn't know people would dislike name for being too long. Han Zio pondered for a while before he came up with another name. Black, your name is too short now. A single world code name is permissible, but code names that are just colors have long been taken by other assassins. All the names like Red, Blue, Orange, and so on were mostly names of the honored assassins of the previous generation who have passed away. The organization will not allow someone else to reuse their code names. Mr. Black. Alright, this name was much more ordinary. The server quickly recorded it. You are now a reserve level assassin with a blank resume. You can only rise to Scorpion level upon the completion of your first assignment. Employers will usually pick from our whole list of assassins. If someone chooses you, we will contact you. Until then, you can take up assignments that are open to everybody on the market or assassinate wanted personnel. Of course, you can also accept private jobs. We do not have any hard requirements for our assassins, but we will take 5% of the reward as our commission. If you have any questions in the future, you can always call up our reception at Hotel Victoria. All of these are wanted assignments. The servant took out a tablet and opened a page on the dark net before passing it to Han Zio. Han Zio instantly saw the most popular personnel on the list, himself. 0. $5 million reward. Dead or alive. Location, West Capital, Star Dragon. All the best. If he had returned to the West Capital, his movements would have been heavily restrained. Fortunately, he had escaped early. Han Zio sniggered. It would take a long time for the Germinal organization to realize their efforts were all in vain. He was the most popular target on the wanted list as the Germinal organization had spent a lot of effort in chasing him down and hunting him recently, but he was not the most wanted. Some of the accumulated prices had even reached tens of millions. They were mostly impossible assignments such as stealing top-secret intelligence from a certain country. Based on the security and defense around Division 13 Seconds Underground database, this mission's success rate could go as low as 0.001%, with the probability of death being 99.999%. This assignment only looked good on the list. No one would really attempt to do it. Mr. Black, you have a new personal assignment. Han Zio was pleasantly surprised. He received an assignment within 5 minutes of uploading his particulars onto the net. This organization's business is really thriving, Han Zio remarked sincerely. Such happenings are actually quite rare. The employer hopes to speak with you personally. Take a seat first. He will arrive in about 10 minutes. Han Zio complied. 10 minutes later, a middle-aged man walked in hastily. What will the bounty for this assignment be? And tell me more about the target's protection and location. 12 to 20 bodyguards. The location is right in this city. The remuneration will be $10,000. Only $10,000. Han Zio frowned slightly. That price was insufficient to employ an assassin. Cheng Shan Shui nodded anxiously. He had immediately been turned down by other assassins when they heard the price. He lacked enough money to pay for the usual price, so he had decided to try his luck on new assassins like Han Zio. I will take it, Han Zio agreed. Cheng Shan Shui cheered inwardly. He took out a stack of documents and passed them to Han Zio. Han Zio stood up and prepared to leave. Cheng Shan Shui quickly stopped Han Zio from going and asked, "How long will you need to finish this job?" Han Zio paused. He looked out the window and saw that it just reached noon. I'm guessing you haven't had lunch, right? He will be gone by the time you finish your lunch. Cheng Shan Shui's heart skipped a beat. Based on his impression, assassins would normally do some pre-assignment preparations, such as reconnaissance and escape route planning. Was this Mr. Black really that powerful, or was he just being arrogant? We meet again, Mr. Cheng. Cheng Shan Shui was anxiously waiting for the result of his assignment when he heard a voice. He raised his head and saw that it was the man, codenamed Lawson, who had previously turned down his assignment. He was a Scorpion-level assassin. Oh, it's you. How are you doing? I have some free time for now. I can take your assignment, Lawson said coolly. Cheng Shan Shui's eyes glimmered for a moment before they became gloomy again. I'm sorry, my assignment has already been accepted by someone else. Cheng Shan Shui gave a bitter smile. The Blood Pact Society's rule dictated that once a contract had been established, no one could alter it. Lawson was slightly disappointed upon hearing his words. His phone suddenly rang. He looked at the incoming call. It was from an old client of his, Yu Zhu. Hey, Lawson. A man's voice was heard on the phone. Yes, it's me. How can I help you, Mr. Yu? Lawson said nonchalantly. I have a job that I hope you can help with. Tell me more about it. Lawson took out his tablet and looked over the information. He then raised his head suddenly and looked at Cheng Shan Shui. He was the target. So, what do you think? I will take it, Lawson replied confidently. Great. I will ask my guy to transfer the deposit too. Boom. Suddenly, the sound of someone dropping onto the floor was heard through the phone. A gunshot was heard from a distance and Lawson's body stiffened. He recognized the sound. It was a gunshot from a sniper rifle. Soon after, he heard people shouting and screaming in panic. He did not bother to speak as he knew Yu Yuzu had just been killed by someone. This sniper killed the target, who was surrounded by a dozen bodyguards, with just one shot. He's a fine sniper. Lawson's face tensed up as he immediately deduced the whole sequence of events. Cheng Shan Shui's assignment was to kill Yu Yuzu. After all, they were enemies. Using the information provided by Cheng Shan Shui, Han Zio stationed himself on top of a high-rise building a few hundred meters away from Yu Yuzu's base in advance. He aimed his sniper from a high vantage point and wanted to snipe Yu Yuzu through the window. However, Yu Yuzu walked out of the main gate, which made Han Zio's job much easier. Even though he was surrounded tightly by a dozen bodyguards, they were no use in defending Han Zio's shot. His newly produced was strong enough to penetrate any non-metal object easily. The bullet pierced through a bodyguard's body and with no sign of slowing down, it went right into Yu Yuzu's heart. One shot, one kill. Assassinating a regular person was too simple for Han Zio. As soon as Han Zio was back in Hotel Victoria, the troubled Cheng Shan Shui stood up with a look of anxiousness. The job is done. Cheng Shan Shui's body loosened up instantly. He subconsciously looked at his watch, and he realized that Han Zio had only spent 45 minutes between leaving this place and coming back, which meant he had taken less than 10 minutes for the actual assassination after subtracting the traveling time. He took out a suitcase containing $10,000 and handed it to Han Zio. Completed. You gain 25,000 EXP. Han Zio pressed the bell to call the servant in so that he could take up the wanted job on the Rose Militant. Suddenly, he was aware of something, and he turned around. Someone is watching me. A man, sitting at the bar, looked at him as if he was sizing him up. Han Zio did not recognize him, but the man clearly showed a hint of provocation. He gathered his power and threw a freezing stare toward the man to send a universal message. What are you looking at? Lawson's whole body turned rigid as if he was being locked onto by a menacing sense of hostility. The feeling of danger was hitting his mind in waves. He hurriedly moved his eyesight away from Han Zio, and the ill feeling finally disappeared. In just a few short seconds, Lawson's forehead had become covered in cold sweat. What a terrifying feeling. I should never provoke this guy again. Lawson quickly gave up on his previous scheming thoughts and left hastily after paying the bill, refusing to stay a moment longer. We meet again. Han Zio smiled gently at the servant. It was the first time the servant had encountered a newbie who ranked up to an official member of the society so quickly. He was left in wonder. Now you are officially a Scorpion-level assassin. Higher tiers of benefits will be available to you. Additionally, you will receive primary VIP benefits in Hotel Victoria and other cities. What is my current ranking on the Darknet Assassins ranking list? Han Zio suddenly asked. The servant was dumbfounded by question. Only the top-ranking assassins will appear on the list. You are at least more than 1,000 over rankings away. Right now, the top 10 assassins were on average at level 40. They were not of top-notch capability. Only the top 3 assassins were more terrifying as their powers were near the upper limit of version 1.0. I want to take the assignment to eliminate the Rose Militant. Alright, your request is now being processed. Please give us a few moments. The servant wrote down the request on some paper before placing it in a specially made metal tube. He went forward to the reception desk and stuck the tube into a metal pipeline, which fitted the metal tube perfectly. Swoosh! The tube was sucked into the pipeline. The tube traveled rapidly through the pipeline, bypassing numerous openings and other similar tubes, before coming to its new exit. It was a spacious room decorated like a customer service room. Rows of tables were lined up neatly with a few computers on top of them. The administrative staff were busy processing the documents on their computers, and every table was connected to the pipeline. An administrative worker dressed in an all-black suit took out the paper from the metal tube and started typing furiously on the keyboard to upload the information. You have triggered sea-level quest. Quest information. The Somber Desert is filled with many factions, including wanderers and hired militants. But how did a desolated land like this attract so many powerful factions? Perhaps it has something to do with certain incidents in the past. You should explore this land. Quest requirement: kill all members of the Rose Militant. Time limit: 15 days. Quest reward: 15,000 EXP. Special reward: 25,000 EXP. Unknown reward: I need to use your cargo plane, Hanzio said to Antonio. Antonio was slightly shocked. We only use the military cargo plane for large-scale transactions. Even if you are a Black Gold VIP, you are still required to pay the stipulated charges, Antonio stuttered. Okay, got it. Well, how many guys you want to transport? When will they leave? Just myself. I'm leaving immediately. He paused for quite a while and eventually said, what a waste. The glaring sun was shining brightly on the endless desert. The yellow sand was heated to a temperature unbearable for the human body. Dorothy, nothing again this trip. Luo King, the chief of the Rose Militants, questioned. This time, we searched in sectors E4, E5, and D4. There are still no signs of Felonia, Dorothy replied with frustration. Rose Militant was a mercenary organization made up entirely of female members. They were active in the Sommer Desert and had been searching for Felonia for years. The Fabian organization was a global arms-dealing organization that had branches everywhere for more convenient business dealings. Welcome to Sommer Desert. Antonio descended from the plane. Why did you follow? Haha, the chief in charge of the Sommer branch was killed in a recent battle. Therefore, I am here to take care of some administrative matters. Hanzio felt confused as he could not understand what the different groups of forces were fighting for in the barren terrain. To find Felonia. What's that? Hanzio was very curious. Antonio yawned. I am equally clueless. Hanzio realized that Antonio was trying to hide something from him. He raised his brows, collected his gear, and walked toward the jeep without saying another word. The campsite of Rose Militant was heavily guarded. It had concrete walls and barbed wire on the walls. The metal gate was the sole entrance and exit to the base. Within the base, there was a tall sentry post. The sentry guard on the post observed the surroundings, while the sentry post was also equipped with a huge searchlight that would be switched on at night. Hanzio came to a conclusion. Unless he could burrow into the sand and dig a tunnel into the base, it was almost impossible for him to infiltrate the base. Furthermore, Rose Militant consisted only of women. They had big breasts and perky asses. Hanzio had a perky ass, but he could not squeeze out any breasts. Even if he could disguise himself as a woman, it was highly likely that he would be discovered. The infiltration was bound to fail. Hanzio glanced at the weapons on the sentry post. There were several grenade launchers and dozens of heavy machine guns in addition to the tough concrete walls encircling the base. An assault of the base was also bound to fail. It seems like the only way to achieve success for the mission is to lure the snake out. Fusion. Success. Congratulations, you have discovered. Oh, Hanzio raised his eyebrows. The product from the fusion was not what he had anticipated. However, the visor was of great use to a sniper since it offered greater accuracy compared to using the thermoscope. Let me try it again. Congratulations, you have discovered. That's the one. Hanzio nodded. The EMP interference machine was a common blueprint. He was still short of some highly destructive explosives, mines, and traps. He touched his chin, and his eyes suddenly lit up. He had a new idea. I guess I can try creating the items and skip the fusion process. The core concept behind the highly explosive rounds was flammable gas. By compressing flammable gas into a container, its power would be escalated to an extent that was no lesser than the mines of shattering shards. After a while, a circular mine with a 30mm diameter emerged from Hanzio's production. The gases were very hard to control. A slight mistake meant that the entire process had to be repeated and modifications of the mechanical parts had to be made. Finally, after 13 failures, an angelic line emerged on the interface. Success. You have successfully created a new prototype blueprint. After witnessing the effects of this new weapon, Hanzio whispered, it's too conventional to call the explosive the highly flammable, poisonous, delayed explosion mine. I shall call the mine flaming poison. The naming is successful. You have gained the blueprint of the new creation. After setting up the trap, Hanzio parked his jeep at a sand dune that was around 400 meters away from the ambush. He then silently lay prone on ground and looked through his scope like a patient hunter waiting for his kill. The jeeps of Rose Militant were speeding through the desert. The rotating tires threw the sand into the air, and a long dragon of dust trailed behind the vehicles. An eerie sound of electricity could be heard in the air. Dorothy and 5 other troops could sense that there was a special wave that originated from somewhere not far away. Simultaneously, all the meters on the cars cracked, and the 4 jeeps instantly lost control and collided into one another like drunkards. No matter how much the drivers stepped on the pedals, the jeeps were still out of their control. Enemy ambush. Dorothy was shocked and started to scan the surroundings alertly. What was the cause of the paralysis of the vehicles? Could it have been an EMP? The troops searched around, and they could only see the yellowish sand in the darkness. The cold wind of the night howled. The troops could feel the goosebumps on their arms. He then changed to the highly flammable magazine and fired a shot at the trap lined with the flaming poison mines. Fire started burning at the point the bullet landed and ignited the flaming poison mines. Boom! After a thunderous sound, a sea of flames emerged, and it resulted in a chain reaction that lit up the other mines, causing continuous explosions. The merciless flames swallowed 4 jeeps, and the poisonous gas was released everywhere. Coughs were heard everywhere. Dorothy felt nauseous, and her teammates looked as if they were suffering worse. Their heads were spinning, and they were vomiting uncontrollably. If all of them continued to remain at their current position, they were bound to die from either the flames or the poisonous gas. What a sly bastard! Dorothy tried hard to overcome the nauseating sensation in her chest and yelled, "Charge toward the sniper and kill him. That's the only way we can survive." The Rose militants staggered toward the direction that the bullets originated from. The venomous gas had infiltrated their bodies, and they were clearly poisoned. Only Dorothy, who had the physical attributes of a pugilist, was able to withstand the poison. She led the troops in the charge. Han Zhao calmly switched to the cartridge with the spindle-shaped penetration bullets. He fired the sniper, and the gunshots sounded as if they followed a steady tempo. Shot by shot, he wiped out the militants one by one. The bulletproof vests were unable to withstand the power of the penetration bullets. Han Zhao deliberately made Dorothy the sole survivor of his attacks. Firstly, he killed all of Dorothy's assistants, and he was only left with the strongest of them all, Dorothy, to fight. After Han Zhao killed the last of the ordinary militants, Dorothy finally got close to him. Dorothy wielded her axe and slashed it at Han Zhao's head. Han Zhao dodged the strike and slid backward 3 steps like a mudskipper. Dorothy missed her strike. Strafe. Like a phantom, Han Zhao drew the berserk eagles from his waist. The continuous firing by Han Zhao instantly led to countless penetration bullets piercing Dorothy's body. Dorothy shrieked in pain. However, her eyes revealed a tinge of arrogance. She took out a shotgun from her back and fired at Han Zhao. Shotgun bullets are the deadliest close range. It is a sure kill, you're a dead man. Dorothy expected Han Zhao to be dead, but the next moment astonished her. The scale-like armor covered Han Zhao's upper body, and the bullets from the shotgun struck the hard surface of the armor, resulting in sparks. With his current skills, Han Zhao was able to create a magnetically controlled retractable armor that covered his entire upper body. "I have armor, you fool." Han Zhao then fired all the bullets in his magazine at Dorothy's body. A pugilist that reached Pan Kuang's level was able to withstand the penetration by the bullets only if he focused hard. Compared to Pan Kuang, Dorothy was much weaker, and it was impossible for her to withstand the penetration by the high-caliber bullets. Blood spurted out from her mouth, and her bloodshot eyes stared hard at Han Zhao. She was mumbling, as if she wanted to say something. Boom! Han Zhao blasted Dorothy's head with his pistol. "You killed Dorothy. You gained 7,500 EXP. Han Zhao searched Dorothy's body and discovered that her gun was modified. From the modifications, it seemed like Rose Militant had a skillful mechanic. The endless flames from the flaming poison mines would soon attract more enemies. Han Zhao retrieved the EMP interference machine and returned to his jeep, quickly leaving the site. The Rose militants brought back 20 bodies of their dead comrades. These bodies had grievous wounds created by the bullets of a sniper. Looks like Dorothy and the others were not ambushed by the Cautonians. They were killed by a sniper, Ghostly Fox said. Luo King's face sank as she started thinking hard about the culprit behind the attack. Rose Militant had not been approached by assassins for almost a year. Perhaps after a year, some rash youngster had forgotten about the painful lesson the Rose Militants had taught the assassins. Dorothy had suffered a painful death. She was murdered at a close range. This indicated that the sniper possessed some close combat abilities. A petite woman approached. She was wearing an oil-stained coat and said, "I found the killer's vehicle tax." He headed toward the southeast. There are 3 distinct camps based there, and the nearest one belongs to the Fabian organization. "Good job, Su Lai." Su Lai was the mechanic of the Rose Militants. "I found some shards of the exploded mines at the site, and I presume the incident was a well-planned ambush. The outer shells of the mine belong to the Fabian organization. It is highly likely that the killer is residing in the camp of the Fabian organization. I tried to piece back the mine that was used, and it seems like a new type of explosive. The explosion involved the use of several gases." Luo King squinted. They had met a tough foe this time, but she was determined to take revenge. She made an encrypted phone call to their secret sponsor, Mr. Sebastian. A team of 20 of our troops were hunted down by an unknown assassin. An old raspy voice emerged from the other side of the line. I will send someone to handle it. Every time an assassin emerged, the sponsor behind the Rose militants would send out other professional assassins to punish the culprit. That was the reason Rose Militant had managed to wipe out so many assassins in the Somber Desert. A helicopter landed on the helipad within the compound of the base camp of Rose Militant. 3 cold-looking men alighted from the helicopter. They seemed to possess an air of mystery that prevented others from wanting to go near them. How's the situation? Code 3, who was the captain of the team, asked directly. Luo King gave him a brief of the events that had occurred. Code 3 squinted and said, the enemy is a sniper, and his ambush on your men was to scout on your abilities. He wanted to lure all of you out. The enemy possesses detailed information about you guys, and based on the latest information provided, the enemy is probably residing in the camp of the Fabian organization. However, the Fabian organization is not a party you want to mess with. We are unable to conduct assassinations in their territory. What are you guys planning to do then? Luo King asked. You guys are the target of the killer. Therefore, we are going to use you as bait to lure him out. After that, the 3 of us will ambush him and secure the kill. Ghostly Fox, you will be responsible for taking our teams out over the upcoming few days, Luo King ordered. Ghostly Fox nodded. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.